Fern Hill by Dylan Thomas. When Dylan Thomas married Kathleen, he went with her to live in Lagon in South Wales. Earlier, as a boy, he had lived there with his aunt. Fern Hill was the farm of his aunt. In this poem, he celebrates the place and his boyhood memories. It idealizes the innocence and excitement of childhood. His own recollected exhilaration issues forth as a torrent of words and images. The first two stanzas describe the boy's impressions of a day in his childhood in his aunt's farm. Then he goes to sleep and dreams that the farm is carried away by owls and nightjars. But the farm comes back in the morning when he wakes up and it is wet with dew as though it had gone outdoors at night. It comes to life again. The miracle of creation is repeated. The innocence and unmixed happiness of Adam and Eve and the birth of light on the morning of creation are reenacted. The boy is honored by everything in the farm, the wagons, the foxes, the pheasant. Time leads him once again to sleep in the loft. When he wakes up again, the swallows have flown away. His innocence has flown away. The land will be childless since childhood is over. The poem begins with a conversational tone. Now I was young, but I is the poet, as a small child. Easy under the apple boughs, about the littling house, and happy as the grass was green. So this is the image of a child who is very happy, who is carefree, who is enjoying his childhood, who is innocent. And he is in an orchard with a number of apple trees, and he says the house is lilting, means singing house, and happy as the grass was green. You should remember one thing, that Dylan Thomas uses colors to signify different concepts. Here green symbolizes happiness, joy, strength, everything. So he was green like the grass. He was very happy. The night above the dingle starry. In the night the sky was full of stars. Time let me hail and climb, golden in the heydays of his eyes. Here time is personified. Time is personified, and time permits him to hail and climb golden. There also golden is a color that symbolizes, that signifies happiness, joy of childhood in the heydays of his eyes. And honored among wagons, I was prince of the apple towns. Dylan Thomas, as a child, he was honored among the apple town. Apple towns means cluster of apple trees, and he was the prince. And once below a time. Once below a time is similar to the typical beginning of kids' stories. Once upon a time. Once below a time I lordly had trees and leaves. He was like a lord, he was like a prince, trailed with daisies and barley down the rivers of the windfall light. So the entire atmosphere is full of happiness, flowers, fruits. So Dylan Thomas says, I felt as important and honored as a prince when I played among the farm wagons or among the apple trees which surrounded me like buildings of a town. Windfall light is an instance of synesthesia. And as I was green and carefree, Dylan Thomas continues narrating his experience as a child. He was green, healthy, happy, he was carefree, and he was famous among the barns about the happy yard and singing as the farm was home. Yard was happy. The child sang as the farm was home. The child felt that the farm is his home. In the sun that is young once early. Sun that is young once early. The immediate reference is to the morning sun, but it implies childhood that will not come again. Childhood will be experienced by a person only once in life. Time let me play and be golden in the mercy of his means. Time in the mercy of his means allowed me to play and be golden like the light of the sun. And green and golden, I was huntsman and herdsman. Notice the repetitions which serve to build up the emotive aura, green and golden. And he was huntsman and herdsman. Huntsman and herdsman, two roles which are opposite to each other. Huntsman and herdsman. One hunting, the other one protecting. The cows sang to my horn. The foxes on the hills barked clear and cold. Not merely the plants, but animals also was happy with that boy. And the Sabbath rang slowly in the pebbles of the holy stream. The sound of the streams over the pebbles called me to worship nature, just as the church bells on the Sabbath called Christians to worship. You should notice how the expression the Sabbath rang evokes the church bell calling people to the prayer service. Also the combination holy streams introducing religious evocations. All the sun long means all day long. It was raining. It was lovely. The hayfields high as the house. This is the exaggeration of a child, the perspective of a child. The child considers hayfields as high as the house. The child is in the hayfield, which is taller than the child. So when the child looks at the house, it looks as high as the house. The tunes from the chimneys. The child was able to hear the sound from the chimneys. This is an example of synesthesia, because the sound from the chimneys brings to our mind the sound of dishes from the chimneys, brings to our mind thoughts of tasty food. So here, presenting a sense image in terms of another sensation. Taste or smell in terms of sound. This is synesthesia. It was air and plain, lovely and watery, and fire green as grass. Notice the mixing of color images. Green again comes, and nightly under the simple stars as I rode to sleep. Again, that's an imagination of a child riding to sleep. The owls were bearing the farm away. As the boy slept, the farm disappeared from his consciousness. To the boy's imagination, the owls had carried off the farm. All the moon long I heard. All the moon long means throughout the night. I heard, blessed among stables, the nightjars flying with the ricks. He was able to hear the sound of nightjars, a kind of bird, flying with ricks, haystacks, and the horses flashing into the dark. Horses represent creation. He was able to hear the sound of horses and also flying birds. And then to awake, and the farm like a wanderer white with the dew come back. The child in the next morning, when he woke up from sleep, he found the farm covered with dew, white in color. The dew suggests that a farm had been out of doors It had gone away. The cock on his shoulder. The morning is personified here as a man with a cock on his shoulder. The cock crows in the morning. It helps to concretize the morning. It was all shining. It was Adam and Maiden. The aura of innocence and freshness of paradise is evoked here. That was how the boy felt. At the same time, it's a hint to the temporary nature of the happiness of childhood. In the case of Adam and Maiden, Adam and Eve, they were in paradise, they were very happy, but later they were ousted out of paradise. Dylan Thomas says that the happiness which he experiences in this childhood is temporary. This innocence is temporary. He will be losing everything within no time. It's a temporary nature of happiness. The sky gathered again and the sun grew round that very day. That is the progress of the day, the progress of life. So it must have been after the birth of the simple light, in the first spinning place, the spellbound horses walking warm out of the whinnying green stubble onto the fields of praise. The miracle of creation is evoked. The birth of the simple light is the light that came upon the face of chaos when creation took place. And honored among foxes and pheasants by the gay house under the new made clouds, and happy as the heart was long. The child was honored among these foxes and pheasants. Pheasant is a wild fowl, wild bird, and the house was happy, and the clouds also happy, and the child was almost singing a song because of happiness. In the sun born over and over, it's a cyclical nature of the activities of nature. In the sun born over and over, I ran my heedless ways. Typical child running continuously. My wishes raced through the house high hay. Haystacks as high as a house. Exaggeration by a child. Remember, the whole poem is the perspective of a child. My wishes raced through the house high hay and nothing I cared. Carefree life of a child. And my sky blue trades, the activities of a child, having no significance for the grown-up people. That time allows in all his tuneful turning, time again personified, and such morning songs before the children, green and golden, follow him out of grace. Towards the end of this stanza, the writer talks about a point where one loses the innocence and happiness of childhood. Nothing I cared in the lamb white days. Lamb, an animal that symbolizes innocence, purity. Dylan Thomas, as a child, he was as innocent as a lamb and he was carefree. That time would take me up to the swallow throng loft by the shadow of my hand. Time personified. Time took him to the top of a tree in the moon that is always rising, or maybe he moved along with the moon, nor that riding to sleep. I should hear him fly with the high fields, and wake to the farm forever fled from the childless land. He realized that now he is in a land which is without children, deprived of kids, deprived of the innocence of kids, and he expresses his sorrow. Oh, that's a sigh of sorrow. As I was young, now he looks back. I was young once upon a time. I was young and easy in the mercy of his means, which means today he is no more young, he is no more easy. He is a person with a lot of responsibilities on his shoulder, so he is no more carefree as he was a child. Time held me green and dying. Time personified. The same time Once made me green, that same time now made me dying, though I sang in my chains like the sea. Being a grown up person, the writer found himself locked in chains, no more carefree, no more free child, because he has lost his childhood, he has lost his innocence. So, throughout the poem, there is a feeling of nostalgia, nostalgic feelings, feeling connected to the memories of his childhood. He found solace, he found happiness in the memories of his childhood. He is actually comparing his present life with that of his childhood days. And of course, he feels sorrow as the innocence and happiness has lost forever. He was like Adam and Eve in the paradise. Now he is like Adam and Eve ousted out of paradise. Now we will see Dylan Thomas as a poet. We will have to consider two things in our attempt to estimate the achievement of Dylan Thomas. First, his view of life, and second, the manner in which he gives expression to this view and responds to the random provocations of life. Dylan's exploration led him to a unified and integral view that is not different from the mystic insights of Donne, Wordsworth, and Shelley, and the doctrine of Advaita of India. What is common in these and many others belonging to far-flung times and climes is a realization that the force, a principle, permeates the entire universe. Dylan's worldview is one that was shared by many before him. Death is a change from one form to another. There is no death but only change. This is the quintessence of Dylan Thomas's worldview. When we come to the question of expression, a few things stand out that mark him as different from the other poets of his time. His typical Celtic passionate nature shows itself in many ways, especially in the wild and exuberant romanticism that challenges the cerebral orderliness and the social and political preoccupations of the poetry of Auden, Spenser, and others, his immediate predecessors and contemporaries. It is the same passionate nature that manifests itself in the verbal excitement and the magical words of his early poetry and the torrent of images that often leads to obscurity of meaning. It is true that he was the most prominent among the group known as surrealists. They sought to express themselves by means of images, not through ratiocination. Images piled upon image can and does convey meaning. W.B. Yeats does this with the least obscurity. It should be admitted to Dylan's credit that he did not allow his over-excited imagery to get out of his control. His poems were constructed with great care so that the images were related to each other and to the central theme. The poet's controlling hands are felt to be present through the repetitions, the syllabic meter, assonance, alliteration, etc. The mingling of Freudian and biblical imagery, as well as the mingling of the elemental world of nature and the inner world of man's mind, have been noted as characteristic features of Dylan Thomas's poetry. The ritual and the sacramental element also makes itself felt sometimes. What often captures our attention is the Hopkinsian influence. Some of the themes of Dylan Thomas's poetry are the unity of life and death, unity of all life, man and nature, the problem of identity, time itself, sex, religion, etc. A certain elemental power, the surrealist flow of imagery, the daring use of language, and an amount of obscurity. These roughly sum up Dylan's poetry. Poems of Dylan Thomas. One important characteristic of Dylan Thomas's poetry is the flow of surrealist images. Another feature is the romantic concern with emotions and passions. The world of nature without and mind within, and their fusion. This is one theme. Death is a constantly recurring theme, as is also that of the unity of life. Dylan Thomas works out these themes in his own way. His daring use of language often arrests our attention. A certain amount of obscurity also is almost ever present. Fern Hill is a beautiful poem that recollects the childhood of the poet. As a boy, he had lived at Fern Hill, his aunt's farm in South Wales. The vitality and the freshness, the innocence and charm of childhood are recollected vividly and communicated clearly in the poem. The boy used to sleep and dream that owls and nightjars had carried off the farm, which came back when he woke up in the morning. He was a prince of the apple town. Time sent him back to sleep in the loft again to dream. But boyhood never comes back because he is no longer a boy. The glory of the first light upon the face of chaos and the innocence and purity of Adam and Eve are recaptured in the course of the poem. Thank you.